A red dress, a glittering ballroom, and a CEO everyone feared. By midnight, she stood alone, her composure wavering. One man holding nothing but a glass of water watched from the shadows. The Grand Plaza Hotel's ballroom shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers, their light fractured across mirrored walls like scattered diamonds. Every corner pulsed with the gentle rhythm of jazz notes weaving through the air like threads of gold against the backdrop of forced laughter and calculated small talk. For the executives of Reynolds Technologies, tonight's charity gala wasn't about philanthropy, it was survival. One wrong word, one misplaced glance could end a career. One well-timed compliment might open doors to power. Amanda Reynolds stood at the center of it all, her scarlet gown aflame against the sea of conservative blacks and blues. At 38, she commanded the room not with volume but with presence. People paused mid-conversation as she passed. Executives straightened their posture. Women glanced down at their own dresses, all measuring themselves against her, all coming up short. They called her the Iron Queen of Silicon Valley's Chicago outpost, the woman who had taken Reynolds Technologies from regional player to national powerhouse in under 5 years. The CEO who never flinched, never faltered, and never forgave mediocrity. Tonight, her smile remained perfect, practiced a weapon she wielded with surgical precision. Every gesture calculated, every laugh calibrated for maximum effect. But beneath that flawless exterior, Amanda carried a secret no one in the room could see. The phone call had come just 3 hours before the gala. Her mother, the only person who had ever truly known her, was gone. A stroke sudden and merciless. Amanda had listened to the doctor's sympathetic voice, thanked him for calling, and then hung up. She had applied her makeup, slipped into her dress, and arrived exactly on time, because that's what Reynolds would do. That's what her mother had taught her: never show weakness, especially when you're breaking. So she drank. One flute of champagne, then another. By the fourth, the edges of her perfect mask began to blur. By the sixth, her laugh came a beat too late. By the eighth, even the most oblivious could see something wasn't right with Amanda Reynolds tonight. But no one approached. No one dared. Except for the man who stood alone in the shadows at the far edge of the ballroom, nursing a single glass of water. Eric Taylor hadn't wanted to come tonight. At 32, he found these corporate functions exhausting, the pretense, the posturing, the politics. But attendance was mandatory for all senior engineering staff, and Eric couldn't afford to break rules, not when Sophie depended on him. So he wore his one decent suit, polished his worn leather shoes, and showed up exactly when required. Not a minute before, not a minute after. While others floated from circle to circle, Eric remained anchored to his spot near the exit. His gaze drifted repeatedly to his watch. 9:47 p.m. Mrs. Chen from next door would be reading Sophie her bedtime story now. His 6-year-old daughter would be clutching her stuffed rabbit eyes, heavy with sleep, asking if Daddy would be home when she woke up. Eric had promised he would. It was a promise he intended to keep. 3 years ago, promises had become sacred to Eric. The night Sarah's laughter had been silenced forever by screeching tires on wet pavement. The night a drunk driver had carved a jagged line through Eric's future, leaving him alone to raise their 2-year-old daughter. Since then, every bubbling glass of champagne, every slurred word at these functions reminded him of what he'd lost. So he stayed sober, not from discipline alone, but from devotion. Because Sophie deserved a father who showed up steady and whole every single morning. Eric watched Amanda Reynolds with quiet intensity. Where others saw only power, he recognized the subtle tells of someone coming undone. The slight tremor in her hand when she reached for another glass. The way her smile never quite reached her eyes. The careful way she gripped the back of chairs as she moved through the crowd. When most gazes turned away from the intimidating CEO, Eric's remained. Not from ambition or fascination, but from a place of unexpected recognition. Behind her carefully constructed armor, Amanda Reynolds looked painfully human. By 11, the crowd had thinned, corporate warriors retreating to prepare for tomorrow's battles. Amanda remained, her red dress more vivid against the emptying space. Her balance had shifted from confident to precarious. Eric noticed her fumble with her clutch, attempting to check her phone. It slipped from her fingers, landing with a soft thud on the marble floor. No one moved to help. They pretended not to notice. The mighty CEO of Reynolds Technologies retrieving her own dropped possession. It felt taboo to even witness it. Amanda bent down, swayed dangerously, and managed to grab her clutch on the second attempt. When she straightened, her gaze locked briefly with Eric's across the room. Something passed between them, a flash of recognition, vulnerability, meeting compassion. Then she broke the connection, turning toward the exit with determined steps that betrayed her intoxication. Eric's chest tightened. Memories of Sarah's accident flashed through his mind. He hadn't been there to stop her from getting into that cab with a driver who'd had just a few drinks. He hadn't been there to save his wife. But he was here now, watching another disaster unfold in slow motion. Amanda pushed through the double doors toward the hotel lobby. Eric hesitated only a moment before following, keeping a respectful distance. In the marbled expanse of the lobby, he watched her fumble with her keys, the metal jangling, as she tried to separate the car key from the others. Something tightened in Eric's throat. Images of Sarah, of Sophie, of shattered glass on wet pavement crowded his vision. Before he could second-guess himself, he crossed the lobby. He stopped a few feet from her, close enough to be heard but not so close as to startle. "Ms. Reynolds," his voice remained steady, professional. "I don't think that's a good idea tonight." Amanda turned, her eyes narrowing as she tried to bring him into focus. "Do I know you?" "Eric Taylor, Engineering Department. And no, we haven't formally met." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "But I'd like to help you get home safely." A flash of indignation crossed her face. "I'm perfectly capable of making excellent decisions, yes. That's why you run a billion-dollar company." Eric kept his tone neutral, respectful. "But tonight's different for everyone sometimes. Please let me call you a car, or I can drive you if you prefer." Amanda stared at him, her expression cycling through anger, confusion, and finally a flash of clarity. For a moment, Eric thought she might dismiss him outright. Instead, she looked down at the keys in her hand, then back at him. "Why do you care?" The question came out softer than she'd likely intended. Eric didn't hesitate. "Because I've seen what happens when someone drives who shouldn't, and I couldn't live with myself if I just walked away." Something in his tone must have reached her. Amanda's shoulders relaxed slightly, her CEO mask slipping to reveal exhaustion beneath. She handed him the keys, the gesture both surrender and command. "My address is in this GPS, don't scratch it." Despite the alcohol, her voice found its authoritative edge. Eric nodded, not mentioning that her Tesla would drive itself better than either of them. Some battles weren't worth fighting. The night air hit them as they exited the hotel, Chicago's spring chill carrying the scent of the lake. Amanda walked steadily enough, though Eric remained close, ready to assist without making it obvious. Her car waited in the VIP section, sleek and black against the pavement. Once settled in the passenger seat, Amanda leaned her head back and closed her eyes. Eric adjusted the driver's seat. Previous occupants had clearly been taller and navigated out of the parking garage. The Tesla's engine purred almost silently beneath them. Chicago's nightscape unfolded before them, skyscrapers outlined in light against the darkness. For several blocks, neither spoke. Eric focused on the road, occasionally glancing at his passenger. Amanda kept her eyes closed, though her breathing indicated she wasn't asleep. "I lost my wife to a drunk driver." The words left Eric's mouth unbidden, surprising even him. 3 years ago, she was taking a cab home from a dinner with friends. The driver had been drinking. Amanda opened her eyes but didn't turn toward him. He continued, his voice steady. "That's why I don't drink anymore. Not because I judge people who do, but because my daughter deserves a father who's always fully present, always capable of coming when she calls." The Tesla navigated onto Lake Shore Drive, the water a vast darkness to their right. City lights reflected off the gentle waves. "You have a daughter." Amanda's voice sounded clearer now, as if the confession had sobered her somewhat. "Sophie. She's 6. A small smile touched Eric's lips, automatic whenever he spoke of his daughter. "She's with the neighbor tonight, probably fast asleep by now." Amanda was quiet for a long moment. "Then my mother died today." The words hung in the car, stark and heavy. Eric's hands tightened imperceptibly on the steering wheel. He didn't offer platitudes or expressions of sympathy, and instead he simply nodded, acknowledging her pain without diminishing it. "I got the call this afternoon, stroke." Amanda's voice remained steady, as if she were discussing quarterly projections rather than personal tragedy. "She was the only person who ever saw me as just Amanda, not the CEO, not the Iron Queen, just her daughter." Eric navigated a turn, giving her the space to continue or retreat as she needed. "And instead of dealing with it, I went to a charity gala and drank too much champagne." A humorless laugh escaped her. "Stellar crisis management." "Grief doesn't follow protocols," Eric said quietly. "It ambushes you when you least expect it." The GPS directed them into the Gold Coast neighborhood where historic charm met modern luxury. Amanda's building rose before them, all glass and clean lines against the night sky. "When Sarah died," Eric continued, I tried to be perfectly put together for Sophie. Super dad, by day falling apart alone at night. I thought that was strength. He pulled into the circular driveway of Amanda's building. It wasn't. Real strength came later when I learned to be honest about the broken places. He parked the car, the engine shutting off automatically. Amanda sat still staring straight ahead. For a moment, Eric wondered if he'd overstepped sharing too much with a woman who could end his career with a single email. Then Amanda turned to him, her eyes clear despite the alcohol. "Thank you for the ride, Mr. Taylor." Professional again, but without the usual ice. "And for the conversation." Eric nodded, exiting the vehicle to walk around and open her door. The doorman approached, recognizing Amanda immediately. Eric handed him the keys. "Ms. Reynolds needs assistance to her apartment," he said quietly. "She's had a difficult day." The doorman nodded, understanding immediately. Amanda stood beside them, steadier now, but still vulnerable. She looked at Eric with an unreadable expression. "Good night, Ms. Reynolds." Eric stepped back, preparing to call a rideshare for himself. "How will you get home?" The question seemed to surprise even her. "I'll call a car, don't worry." Amanda nodded, then allowed the doorman to escort her inside. Eric watched until the glass doors closed behind them, then pulled out his phone to summon a ride. 20 minutes later, his own apartment building came into view, a modest 6-story structure in a family-friendly neighborhood. Nothing like Amanda's sleek high-rise, but home nonetheless. He tipped the driver and made his way upstairs, shoes in hand, to avoid waking Sophie or Mrs. Chen. The apartment welcomed him with familiar shadows in the faint scent of the spaghetti dinner he'd prepared before leaving. Mrs. Chen had left a note on the counter. Sophie went to bed at 8:30, read 3 stories before she would close her eyes. Called for you once, but settled quickly. Eric placed the note aside, guilt and gratitude mingling in his chest. He crept to Sophie's room, easing the door open just enough to see her small form beneath the covers. Her dark curls splayed across the pillow, one arm wrapped around the stuffed rabbit that had been her constant companion since Sarah died. In sleep, she looked heartbreakingly like her mother. He closed the door silently and retreated to the living room, sinking onto the couch. The events of the night played through his mind, Amanda Reynolds in her red dress, powerful yet suddenly human. The unexpected connection forged in vulnerability and shared loss. He doubted she would remember much of their conversation tomorrow. CEOs like her didn't fraternize with engineers like him. Monday would arrive and the professional distance would reassert itself. Still, he couldn't regret intervening. Some actions weren't about career advancement or social climbing. Some were simply about being human. Eric eventually dragged himself to bed, setting his alarm for 6:30 a.m. Saturday morning pancakes with Sophie were a tradition he never broke, no matter how late the night before. As he drifted towards sleep, his last thought wasn't of Amanda Reynolds or the potential career implications of their encounter. It was of Sophie's smile when she would bounce into the kitchen tomorrow, ready for their weekend ritual to begin. Across the city in her penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, Amanda Reynolds lay fully clothed atop her bed. The room spun slightly when she closed her eyes, so she kept them fixed on the ceiling, tracing the subtle patterns in the paint. The alcohol was wearing off, leaving a dull headache in its wake. With sobriety came clarity, and with clarity, embarrassment. She, Amanda Reynolds, had gotten drunk at a company function, had needed one of her employees to drive her home, had revealed personal information to a virtual stranger. The perfect armor she'd spent years crafting had cracked wide open in the space of a single evening. What was his name again? Eric Taylor, engineering department. She tried to conjure his face, dark hair, steady eyes, shoulders that carried responsibility rather than ambition. He hadn't seemed intimidated by her, hadn't tried to leverage the situation to his advantage. That alone made him an anomaly in her world. Her mother would have liked him. The thought came unbidden, bringing fresh pain with it. Catherine Reynolds had always seen through pretense, had always valued authenticity over achievement. Success without connection is just an empty room with a nice view, she used to say, glancing pointedly around Amanda's expensively furnished but soulless apartment. Now Catherine was gone, and Amanda was indeed alone in an empty room with a spectacular view. The irony wasn't lost on her. Sleep remained elusive as memories of her mother alternated with fragments of the conversation in the car. Eric Taylor's quiet declaration, "My daughter deserves a father who's always fully present," echoed in her mind. Such clarity of purpose, such certainty about what mattered. When had Amanda last felt that kind of conviction about anything beyond quarterly targets and market expansion? Eventually, she forced herself to stand, shedding her red dress like a snake molting skin. In the bathroom, she drank 2 full glasses of water and swallowed ibuprofen from the medicine cabinet. As she wiped away her makeup, she hardly recognized the woman in the mirror, vulnerable, grieving human in ways she rarely allowed herself to be. On the nightstand, her phone displayed dozens of notifications, emails, texts, calendar alerts for tomorrow's conference call. The world didn't stop because Catherine Reynolds had left it. The machine Amanda had built would keep demanding her attention, her energy, her life. For the first time in years, she silenced her phone completely before crawling beneath the covers. Tomorrow would arrive with its demands and decisions. Tonight, she would allow herself the luxury of being simply Amanda, a daughter who had lost her mother, a woman adrift in grief. Saturday morning dawned, clear and cool sunlight streaming through the windows Eric had forgotten to close. Sophie was already up. He could hear her humming to herself in the living room, likely working on one of her endless art projects. The digital clock read 7:15 a.m. He'd overslept. Eric dragged himself upright. Memories of the previous night flooding back. The charity gala. Amanda Reynolds. On the drive through nighttime Chicago, he ran a hand through his sleep-rumpled hair, wondering briefly if he'd dreamed the whole encounter. It seemed surreal in the harsh light of morning, the untouchable CEO revealing vulnerability, sharing the news of her mother's death. Him, Eric Taylor, driving her home in her own luxury car. Reality reasserted itself when he checked his phone. A text from Mrs. Chen. Sophie says thank you for tucking her in last night. You're a good father even when you're not there. He hadn't tucked Sophie in. He'd arrived home long after she was asleep. But he'd promised he would be there in the morning, and here he was. "Bah!" Sophie's voice called from the hallway. "Are you awake? It's pancake day." Eric smiled, pushing aside thoughts of Amanda Reynolds. Coming sunshine, start getting the ingredients ready. He pulled on a t-shirt and sweatpants, splashed water on his face, and joined his daughter in their small kitchen. Sophie had already set out flour, eggs, and milk on the counter, her step stool positioned strategically for maximum helpfulness. Her dark curls were wild from sleep, her Wonder Woman pajamas slightly too short at the ankles. She'd grown again. "I want blueberry today," she announced, climbing onto her stool. "And I want to flip them myself." "Blueberry it is, and you can flip the small ones." They fell into their familiar Saturday routine, Sophie measuring ingredients with intense concentration, Eric handling the hot griddle. They worked side by side, the small kitchen filled with the scent of butter and the sound of Sophie's chatter. "Mrs. Chen let me stay up until you came home," Sophie said casually, stirring the batter with more enthusiasm than skill. Eric raised an eyebrow. "Did she? Now the note said you went to bed at 8:30. Sophie's expression turned sheepish. "Well, I went to my room at 8:30, but I wasn't sleeping. I was reading with my flashlight." "Sophie Taylor, you know the rules about bedtime. But you weren't home yet, and you promised you'd be home when I woke up, so I wanted to make sure." Her lower lip trembled slightly. "I didn't want you to disappear like Mommy did." Eric's heart constricted. He set down the spatula and knelt to meet her eyes. "Sophie, look at me. I will always come home to you. Always. Sometimes work makes me stay out late, but that doesn't mean I won't come back." Sophie nodded, her eyes serious. "Was it a good party? Did you dance with anyone pretty?" The image of Amanda Reynolds in her red dress flashed through Eric's mind. It wasn't that kind of party sunshine, just a lot of grown-ups talking about boring grown-up things. "Like taxes," Sophie wrinkled her nose. "Even more boring than taxes," Eric assured her, returning to the griddle. "Now how about you add those blueberries to the batter, carefully like we practiced." The moment passed, Sophie's attention captured by the important task of blueberry distribution. They ate their pancakes at the small table by the window, planning their weekend, the park this afternoon, the library tomorrow, laundry somewhere in between. Normal life, safe life. The life Eric had carefully constructed from the wreckage of tragedy. Across the city, Amanda Reynolds woke to sunlight and silence. Her head throbbed dully, her mouth dry as sand. The events of the previous night came back in fragments: the gala, the champagne, the quiet engineer who'd driven her home. And beneath it all, the knowledge that her mother was gone. She reached for her phone automatically, then remembered she'd silenced it. When she turned it back on the screen filled with notifications, missed calls from the funeral home, texts from her assistant about Monday's board meeting, emails demanding immediate attention. The world hadn't stopped turning just because Amanda's had. With effort, she pushed herself upright, wincing at the movement. On her nightstand sat a glass of water and two white tablets that hadn't been there when she fell asleep. Beside them, a folded note. She reached for it with a frown. Thought you might need these in the morning. My deepest condolences about your mother. E.T. The handwriting was neat masculine. Eric Taylor. He must have asked the doorman to bring these up after he'd left her. A simple act of kindness, unexpected and unrequired. When was the last time someone had done something for Amanda without expectation of return? She swallowed the pills with the water, then made her way to the shower. As the hot water washed over her, Amanda forced herself to think practically. Funeral arrangements needed to be made. Her mother's house in Evanston would need to be dealt with. The board meeting on Monday couldn't be postponed. They were finalizing the acquisition of a smaller tech firm, a deal she'd been orchestrating for months. Grief would have to wait its turn, compartmentalized like everything else in Amanda's carefully managed life. By 9 o'clock, she was dressed in yoga pants, in a cashmere sweater, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, as close to casual as Amanda Reynolds ever came. She'd called the funeral home, spoken briefly with her assistant to reschedule non-essential meetings, and ordered breakfast through an app. Now she sat at her dining table, laptop open, attempting to focus on work emails while waiting for her food to arrive. The penthouse felt cavernous this morning, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view that should have been comforting, but instead emphasized her isolation. 40 floors up, surrounded by luxury and completely alone. Her mother had been right about that empty room. Her doorman called up to announce the food delivery. When the elevator doors opened directly into her penthouse foyer, Amanda was surprised to see the doorman himself holding the bag rather than sending it up with the delivery person. I thought I'd bring this up myself, Ms. Reynolds, he explained, setting the bag on the console table, and to check if you're feeling better this morning. Amanda blinked momentarily, thrown by the personal attention. I'm fine, Thomas, thank you. He nodded, hesitating slightly. That gentleman last night, he seemed very concerned about you. Asked me to make sure you got safely to your apartment, had me bring up water and aspirin. Said you'd had some bad news. Heat rose to Amanda's cheeks. How many people had witnessed her moment of weakness? How far would the story spread? Reading her expression, Thomas quickly added, Don't worry, Ms. Reynolds. I've been a doorman for 25 years. Discretion is my specialty. I just wanted to say, if you need anything day or night, you just call down. My shift ends at 6, but I'll leave word with the night staff. The unexpected kindness caught Amanda off guard. Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate that. After he left, she stood motionless in her foyer, the breakfast bag forgotten. 2 acts of simple human decency in less than 24 hours from a virtual stranger and from a man she passed every day but barely acknowledged. Why did both feel so foreign? The answer came with painful clarity, because Amanda had built her life to repel such gestures. The armor she wore, the walls she'd constructed, the reputation she'd cultivated, all served to keep others at a distance. In the boardroom, that approach had made her formidable. In life, it had made her alone. Her mother had tried to tell her in her gentle but persistent way, success means nothing if you can't share it, Amanda. Power means nothing if you use it only for yourself. The ache of loss swept through her again, stronger this time. Not just for her mother, but for the relationship they might have had if Amanda hadn't been so determined to prove herself, to build her empire, to show the world that Catherine Reynolds' daughter could conquer anything. Now it was too late for do-overs. Too late for the conversations they'd never had, the time they'd never spent together, the understanding that might have grown between them if Amanda hadn't been so busy being the Iron Queen. She carried her breakfast to the table and ate mechanically, tasting nothing. The emails on her screen blurred as tears threatened. Tears she refused to acknowledge. CEOs didn't cry over breakfast, not even when they'd lost their mothers, not even when they were alone in penthouses 40 floors above the world. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. The funeral director again. Amanda straightened her spine, cleared her throat, and answered in her boardroom voice. There was work to be done, arrangements to be made, a company to run. Feelings could wait. By Monday morning, Eric had nearly convinced himself that the entire incident with Amanda Reynolds had been a non-event. She'd had a difficult night, he'd helped her get home safely, end of story. Odds were she barely remembered their conversation, and if she did, she'd probably prefer to forget it. Powerful people rarely appreciated reminders of their vulnerable moments. He dropped Sophie at school with their usual goodbye ritual, 3 kisses and a high five, then headed to Reynolds Technologies' gleaming headquarters in downtown Chicago. The 30-story glass tower reflected the morning sunlight, thousands of windows catching fire as he approached. Eric had worked here for nearly 5 years, ever since moving from Boston after Sarah's death. The building had always impressed him, but today it felt oddly forbidding, as if aware of his Friday night transgression. Inside, he nodded to security, swiped his badge at the turnstiles, and joined the Monday morning elevator crowd, software engineers clutching coffee, marketing staff scrolling through weekend emails. Everyone a little duller around the edges than they'd be by midweek. Eric's team occupied half of the 14th floor, close enough to the executive suites to feel important, far enough away to avoid constant scrutiny. He made his way to his desk, exchanging greetings with colleagues, most of whom had also attended Friday's gala. Taylor survived the weekend. Marcus Chen dropped into the chair beside Eric's desk, coffee sloshing dangerously close to the rim of his mug. At 28, Marcus was the youngest senior engineer on the team and perpetually wired on caffeine and ambition. Intact and functioning, Eric replied, booting up his computer. Sophie and I hit the park, did some laundry. Thrilling stuff. Man, I don't know how you do it. Single dad, full-time engineer, and still managing to show up at these corporate things. Marcus shook his head admiringly. I can barely manage my houseplants. Eric shrugged. You get used to juggling. He hesitated, then asked casually, how was the rest of the gala? I left around 11. Same as always. Speeches, donations, networking. Marcus leaned closer, lowering his voice, though the Iron Queen was acting weird. Drinking way more than usual. Heard from Alicia in marketing that she nearly fell over at one point. Eric kept his expression neutral. Everyone has off days. Yeah, but Amanda Reynolds, she doesn't do off days. That woman is like a machine. Marcus took another slug of coffee. Anyway, Reynolds Enterprises stock is up this morning, so whatever was going on with her clearly didn't affect business. Speaking of business, we should talk about the server migration. The conversation shifted to work matters, much to Eric's relief. He immersed himself in code and meetings, pushing thoughts of Amanda Reynolds to the background. By lunchtime, he'd almost forgotten the strange intimacy of their Friday night encounter. Then his email pinged with a meeting request that sent his carefully constructed normalcy crashing down. Subject: meeting request. A. Reynolds location. CEO office, 30th floor, time 2:00 p.m. Today note: mandatory attendance, no reschedule options. Eric stared at the screen, his sandwich forgotten halfway to his mouth. Amanda Reynolds wanted to meet with him. Today. In her office, his mind raced through possibilities. Was she angry about Friday night, embarrassed, planning to ensure his silence? Or worse, had she somehow convinced herself that he'd taken advantage of the situation? Marcus peered over his shoulder, whistling low. Dude, what did you do to get summoned to the tower? No idea, Eric lied, closing the email. Probably about the new security protocol implementation. I've been leading that project. Marcus looked dubious. Reynolds doesn't call engineers to her office to discuss security protocols. That's what VPs are for. He clapped Eric on the shoulder. Well, whatever it is, don't make eye contact and back out of the room when you're dismissed. I hear she can smell fear. Eric forced a laugh and returned to his lunch appetite gone. The next 2 hours crawled by, his productivity plummeting as his anxiety rose. By 1:50, he was straightening his tie in the men's room mirror, rehearsing possible openings and responses. Professional, respectful, but not subservient. He wouldn't mention Friday night unless she did first. The executive floor of Reynolds Technologies existed in another dimension compared to the rest of the building. The elevator doors opened onto marble flooring, soft lighting, and actual artwork on the walls instead of motivational posters. Eric approached the assistant's desk with as much confidence as he could muster. Eric Taylor for Miss Reynolds. The assistant, young, impeccably dressed, radiating efficiency, glanced at her screen. Yes, Mr. Taylor. Miss Reynolds is expecting you. Go right in. Eric had never been in the CEO's office before. The space was both exactly what he'd expected and nothing like it at all. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Chicago. Minimalist furniture in shades of gray and white created a sense of space and order. But there were unexpected touches: a small collection of unusual rocks on a side table, a vibrant abstract painting that injected color into the monochrome palette, a bookshelf filled not with business tomes, but with classics of literature and science. Amanda Reynolds stood with her back to the door, gazing out at the city below. Her charcoal gray suit was perfectly tailored, her dark hair swept up in an elegant twist. When she turned at the sound of his entrance, Eric was struck by the transformation from Friday night. This was the Iron Queen in her element, composed, commanding, completely in control. Mr. Taylor, her voice gave away nothing. Thank you for coming. Ms. Reynolds, he nodded, maintaining eye contact despite Marcus's warning. Your message said it was mandatory. A slight smile curved her lips. So it did. She gestured to the seating area. Please sit. Eric took the offered chair, noting that she chose to sit across from him rather than retreating behind her imposing desk. A good sign, impossible to tell. Amanda studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, I owe you a thank you, Mr. Taylor, for Friday night. Relief washed through him. You don't owe me anything, Ms. Reynolds. I was happy to help. Nevertheless, she folded her hands in her lap. You showed discretion and kindness in a situation where many would have seen opportunity or entertainment. Her gaze was direct, unwavering. I appreciate both. Eric nodded, unsure how to respond. The silence stretched between them, not exactly uncomfortable, but certainly charged. Finally, Amanda spoke again. I've been looking into your file, Mr. Taylor. You've been with Reynolds Technologies for nearly 5 years. Your performance reviews are consistently excellent. You've been offered management positions 3 times and declined each one. May I ask why, Bianca? The question caught Eric off guard. Management means longer hours, more travel. My daughter needs stability, consistency. I'm all she has. Amanda nodded as if he'd confirmed something she already knew. Sophie, she's 6, correct? The fact that Amanda remembered Sophie's name from their conversation sent a jolt through Eric. Yes, she'll be 7 in August. And you've been raising her alone since your wife passed away? Yes. Amanda's expression softened almost imperceptibly. That can't be easy. It's not about easy. The words came naturally without rehearsal. It's about what matters. Sophie matters more than career advancement or professional ambition. She matters more than anything. Amanda held his gaze for a long moment, something shifting behind her eyes. What a gift to have such clarity. Before Eric could respond, she rose and walked to her desk, retrieving a folder. I called you here for a professional reason, Mr. Taylor. I'm assembling a special project team to develop a new security infrastructure for our upcoming healthcare platform. It's sensitive work that requires both technical expertise and absolute discretion. She handed him the folder. I'd like you to be part of it. Eric opened the folder, scanning the project overview. His pulse quickened as he grasped the significance of what he was reading. This wasn't just any project, it was potentially game-changing technology with implications far beyond Reynolds' current market, and she wanted him involved. The team will report directly to me, Amanda continued. It means additional responsibility, and yes, some additional hours, but also flexibility when needed for personal matters. She paused. For Sophie. Eric looked up from the folder, momentarily speechless. Was Amanda Reynolds' notorious taskmaster and demanding CEO actually offering him a position structured around his needs as a parent? Why me? He finally asked. Amanda's expression remained professional, but something warmer flickered in her eyes. Because you're exceptional at what you do, because you understand the value of discretion, and because you have the rare ability to see people as they are, not as their titles or positions. She returned to her chair, crossing her legs at the ankle. The choice is yours, Mr. Taylor. Take the weekend to consider it. Let me know by next Monday. Eric nodded, closing the folder. Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Reynolds. I'll give it serious thought. Good. Amanda stood, signaling the end of the meeting. And Mr. Taylor, thank you again for everything. The layers of meaning in those simple words hung in the air between them. For the ride home, for the conversation, for seeing her as a person, not just a CEO, for the water and aspirin left with the doorman, for caring enough to help without expecting anything in return. Eric nodded once, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused, looking back. I was sorry to hear about your mother, Miss Reynolds, truly. Amanda's carefully maintained composure wavered for just a moment, vulnerability flashing across her face like lightning. Then the mask slipped back into place, but her voice held genuine emotion when she replied, thank you. Eric left the executive floor with the project folder tucked under his arm, mind racing. Whatever he had expected from this meeting, it wasn't this. Not a job offer, not an acknowledgement of his personal situation, and certainly not the brief but unmistakable connection that had passed between them, professional on the surface, but with currents of something more complex underneath. As he rode the elevator back to the 14th floor, Eric tried to make sense of what had just happened. Amanda Reynolds, the Iron Queen of Reynolds Technologies, had noticed him, had remembered details about his life. had created a professional opportunity that took his personal circumstances into account. And somewhere beneath her perfectly composed exterior, Eric had glimpsed again the woman from Friday night, the one who had lost her mother, who understood loneliness, who recognized in him a kindred spirit navigating loss and responsibility. The elevator doors opened, returning him to the familiar landscape of his department. Colleagues glanced up curiously, probably wondering what the CEO had wanted with a mid-level engineer. Eric offered no explanations as he returned to his desk, mind already turning over the project details, weighing the opportunity against the potential impact on his time with Sophie. He realized the first time in years he'd considered making a change to the careful balance he'd constructed. The first time something had seemed worth the risk. Across the building, 30 floors up, Amanda Reynolds returned to the window, gazing out at the city that housed her empire. The meeting with Eric Taylor had gone exactly as planned, professional, focused on his qualifications, offering an opportunity that served both the company's interests and her own agenda of keeping him close. What hadn't been planned was the momentary crack in her armor when he'd mentioned her mother, or the strange comfort she'd found in his simple acknowledgement of her loss. Amanda turned back to her desk, to the never-ending emails and decisions that comprised her day. She was the CEO of Reynolds Technologies. She had an acquisition to finalize, a board to manage, a reputation to maintain. She did not have time for personal connections or emotional complications. And yet, as she immersed herself in work, Amanda found herself wondering what Eric would decide, whether he would accept the position on her special project team, whether those steady eyes would become a regular presence in her professional orbit. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Amanda Reynolds cared about someone else's choice, cared and hoped. Eric's decision came quicker than expected. That same evening, watching Sophie practice her reading at their kitchen table, he realized the special project was an opportunity he couldn't refuse, not just for his career, but for her future. The increased compensation would help build her college fund. The flexibility would allow him to remain present in her life. The challenge would push him professionally in ways he'd been avoiding since Sarah's death. By Tuesday morning, Eric had left a voice message accepting the position. By Wednesday, he'd received formal documentation and instructions to report to the 28th floor conference room on Monday for the project kickoff. The team would be small, 5 engineers, including himself, plus Amanda Reynolds directly overseeing their work. A specialized task force developing cutting-edge security for Reynolds Technologies' expansion into healthcare data management. Word spread quickly through the engineering department. Marcus cornered Eric by the coffee machine Thursday morning, eyes wide with disbelief. "You're on the Phoenix project, reporting directly to Reynolds. How the hell did that happen?" Eric shrugged, pouring coffee with deliberate care. "Right place, right time, I guess. Nobody gets on special projects by being in the right place. You must have impressed someone." Marcus leaned closer, voice dropping. "Word is Reynolds personally selected each team member. Do you know what this means? You're on her radar now, for better or worse." Eric forced a neutral expression, remembering Amanda's vulnerability in the Tesla, her quiet confession about her mother. "I'm just focusing on the work. It's an interesting technical challenge." "Interesting technical challenge," Marcus mimicked, rolling his eyes. "Only you would get handpicked by the Iron Queen and call it an interesting technical challenge. The rest of us would be updating our resumes and practicing our genuflection." Eric steered the conversation back to their current project, deflecting further questions. But Marcus's words lingered. He was on Amanda's radar. The realization brought a complex mix of emotions he wasn't ready to examine. The weekend passed in a blur of normal routines, grocery shopping, with Sophie Sunday afternoon at the neighborhood playground, preparing for the week ahead. Sophie sensed his preoccupation, studying him with solemn eyes that missed nothing. "Are you worried about your new job, Ba?" She caught him staring absently at his laptop Sunday evening, her small hand coming to rest on his arm. "It's not a new job, sunshine, just a new project." Eric closed the laptop, giving her his full attention. "And I'm not worried, just thinking." Sophie climbed onto his lap, a privilege she claimed less frequently now that she was a big girl. "Is it because of the lady in the red dress, the one from the party?" Eric froze, startled by her intuition. "What makes you ask about her?" "You said her name when you were sleeping. I heard you when I got up to go potty last night." Sophie's eyes held no judgment, only curiosity. "Amanda, is she nice?" Eric chose his words carefully, aware of Sophie's ability to read between them. Ms. Reynolds is my boss. She runs the whole company. And yes, she can be nice, but she's also very focused on doing things right. Like you, Sophie declared, settling against his chest. You're focused too. That's what Mrs. Chen says when I ask why you work so much. The observation struck deeper than Sophie could know. Was that how others saw him, how Sophie saw him? A man too focused on doing things right to fully engage with life. Monday morning arrived with a nervous energy Eric hadn't felt in years. He dressed with extra care, selecting his best shirt in the tie Sarah had given him for their last anniversary. Sophie noticed immediately, her eyes widening as she munched her cereal. You look fancy today, like when you go to the important meetings. It is an important meeting. Eric smoothed his tie, checking his reflection in the toaster. First day on the new project. With Amanda, Sophie pronounced the name carefully, testing its importance. With Ms. Reynolds and the team, yes, Sophie nodded solemnly. You should take her some flowers. Mommy always liked flowers when she was sad. Eric nearly dropped his coffee mug. Why do you think Mrs. Reynolds is sad? Because you said her name when you were sleeping and you sounded worried. You only sound worried when someone is sad or hurt. Children possessed a clarity adults lost somewhere along the way. Eric knelt beside Sophie's chair, meeting her gaze directly. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings that aren't just sad or happy. But you're right that Ms. Reynolds has been going through a difficult time. That's very perceptive of you. What's perceptive? It means you notice things other people might miss. It's a good quality. Sophie beamed, filing away the new word. Like how I notice you don't laugh as much since Mommy went to heaven. Eric's throat tightened. Yes, exactly like that. But you're laughing more now, not a lot, but calm. Sophie returned to her cereal, the observation delivered with the casual certainty of childhood. Was he laughing more? Eric hadn't noticed, but Sophie clearly had. The thought followed him to work through security up the elevator to the 28th floor. Was something changing in him? Something subtle enough that only his daughter could detect it? The conference room door loomed before him, emblazoned with Phoenix Project, authorized personnel only. Eric took a deep breath and stepped into the next chapter of his professional life. 4 other engineers were already seated around the polished table, each with varying expressions of anticipation and anxiety. Eric recognized 2 from different departments, nodded in greeting, and took an empty chair. The table held sleek laptops with the Reynolds Technologies logo, sealed folders, and state-of-the-art tablets, all the trappings of a high-priority project with significant resources behind it. Precisely at 9:00 a.m., the door opened again. Amanda Reynolds entered, followed by a young woman carrying a tablet who must be her assistant. The room straightened collectively, an involuntary response to her presence. Today she wore navy blue, her hair loose but perfectly styled, minimal jewelry, except for small diamond studs that caught the light as she moved. Nothing like the vulnerable woman in the red dress from the gala. This was the CEO in her element, commanding attention without effort. Her eyes swept the room, lingering briefly on Eric before addressing the group. Good morning. Welcome to Project Phoenix. For 30 minutes, Amanda outlined the project's scope, significance, and security protocols. Her presentation was flawless, concise, compelling, leaving no questions unanswered. The team would be developing an encrypted health data management system with unprecedented security features positioned to revolutionize patient privacy while allowing necessary access to medical professionals. If successful, it would place Reynolds Technologies at the forefront of healthcare technology and open an entirely new market segment. Throughout her presentation, Eric found himself studying her with the same attention she gave the project. The professional mask was perfect, but now that he'd seen beneath it, he could detect subtle signs of strain. Slight shadows beneath her eyes, expertly concealed with makeup. A certain tension in her shoulders. The funeral must have happened over the weekend. He'd seen the notice in the Tribune, but had felt it inappropriate to attend. This room will be your primary workspace for the duration of the project. Amanda gestured to the state-of-the-art equipment surrounding them. Everything stays here. Nothing related to Phoenix leaves this floor. Each of you has been selected not only for your technical expertise, but for your discretion and loyalty to this company. Her gaze moved around the table, making brief but deliberate eye contact with each team member before landing on Eric. You'll report directly to me. I'll be checking in regularly on your progress, and my office is always open for urgent matters related to Phoenix. My assistant, Ms. Patel, will coordinate scheduling and resources. With that, Amanda handed the meeting to the project manager, a serious man named Richard Kaminsky, who began distributing technical specifications. Before leaving, she paused by Eric's chair, her voice pitched for his ears only. A word after this, Mr. Taylor. He nodded, pulse quickening despite himself. The meeting continued for another hour, diving into technical details and preliminary assignments. Eric participated actively, focusing on the work, rather than speculating about Amanda's request. When Kaminsky finally concluded, the team dispersed to their assigned workstations within the secure room. Eric gathered his materials, nodding to Ms. Patel, who had remained throughout the meeting. Ms. Reynolds wanted to speak with me. Yes, she's expecting you in her office. The assistant's expression revealed nothing as she led him back to the executive floor. Amanda stood at her desk reviewing documents when they entered, looking up with professional courtesy. Thank you, Priya. That will be all for now. The assistant withdrew, closing the door silently behind her. For a moment, neither spoke. The vast office seemed to compress the space between them, making Eric acutely aware of the shift in their relationship since that night in her car. Amanda moved first, setting aside her papers. Thank you for accepting the position. Your expertise will be valuable to the project. The opportunity is significant. I appreciate your confidence in me. Amanda nodded, then surprised him by moving to the seating area rather than remaining behind her desk. Please sit. This won't take long. Eric joined her, maintaining professional distance, while noting the subtle differences in her demeanor compared to their last meeting here. Less guarded, perhaps, or simply more familiar. I wanted to clarify something. Amanda's posture remained CEO perfect, but her tone softened slightly. Your selection for Phoenix was based entirely on your technical qualifications and track record with the company, not on recent personal interactions. Relief and something like disappointment mingled in Eric's chest. I never assumed otherwise. Good. Amanda hesitated, fingers smoothing an invisible wrinkle in her slacks. However, I would be remiss not to acknowledge that our working relationship now has an unusual foundation. You've seen me at a vulnerable moment. You know personal information about me that others in the company don't. Eric met her gaze directly. Information I have no intention of sharing with anyone. I believe you. The simple statement carried weight, but it creates a dynamic we should address directly rather than pretend doesn't exist. I need to know you're comfortable reporting to me given what happened. The question surprised him. Amanda Reynolds, CEO, was concerned about his comfort level. I am. The question is whether you're comfortable having me on the team. A hint of the smile he glimpsed in the car that night flickered across her face. I wouldn't have selected you otherwise, Mr. Taylor. Then we understand each other. Amanda nodded, tension visibly easing from her shoulders. One more thing. The Phoenix project will require occasional extended hours and some schedule flexibility. I know your situation with your daughter, Sophie. Sophie, yes. Another flicker of that almost smile. I want to assure you that I'm aware of your priorities and respect them. Family commitments won't be held against you on this project. The consideration stunned Eric. In his 5 years at Reynolds Technologies, no superior had ever proactively addressed his single-parent status as anything other than a potential liability. Thank you. That's unexpected. Is it? Amanda's expression turned thoughtful. Perhaps it shouldn't be. Good talent deserves accommodation. She rose, signaling the end of their conversation. That's all I wanted to discuss. You should return to the team. Eric stood, recognizing the dismissal, but feeling the conversation remained somehow unfinished. At the door, he paused. Ms. Reynolds. She looked up from her desk where she'd already returned. I hope the funeral went as well as such things can, and I'm sorry for your loss. Amanda's professional mask slipped just for an instant, revealing a flash of genuine emotion. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Back in the Phoenix project room, Eric immersed himself in code and specifications, pushing the interaction with Amanda to the back of his mind. The technical challenges were substantial, requiring his full concentration. By mid-afternoon, he was deep in the architecture of the security protocols, lost in the elegant logic of well-crafted systems. You've been staring at that screen for 3 hours straight, Richard Kaminsky appeared at his shoulder, coffee in hand. Impressive focus, but even machines need rebooting occasionally. Eric stretched, suddenly aware of the stiffness in his shoulders. Just getting a feel for the framework. It's ambitious. Reynolds doesn't do anything that isn't. Kaminsky handed him the coffee. You're Taylor Wright from the encryption team. That's me. Heard good things. You've got a reputation for solving impossible problems and keeping your head down. Kaminsky studied him with shrewd eyes. Both qualities we need on Phoenix. This project is Reynolds' personal mission. Success or failure will reflect directly on everyone involved. Eric sipped the coffee, considering the implication. High visibility. Highest. Word is she's positioning the company for major expansion into healthcare tech. Phoenix is the foundation. Kaminsky lowered his voice. Between us, I think she's also positioning herself. The board's been pushing for results, and this could cement her leadership for the next decade. The revelation added another dimension to the project's importance. Amanda wasn't just developing new technology. She was securing her future at the company. Her personal stake was even higher than Eric had realized. Good to know, Eric replied neutrally, unwilling to engage in corporate politics. Just setting context. Kaminsky straightened. Team dinner Wednesday night, Palmer House, 7 p.m., traditional kickoff for special projects. Reynolds will be there along with some board members. Business casual, but emphasis on business. The dinner invitation, clearly mandatory, complicated Eric's carefully balanced schedule. Wednesdays were library nights with Sophie, a tradition they'd maintained for years. He'd need to find alternative arrangements, perhaps ask Mrs. Chen for another favor. I'll be there, Eric confirmed, already mentally rearranging his week. The rest of the day passed in productive work and cautious team building. The Phoenix Group was deliberately diverse in expertise, security specialists, database architects, UI developers, but unified by their reputation for excellence and discretion. By 5 o'clock, Eric had established his role and gained a preliminary understanding of the project's scope. It was genuinely exciting work, challenging in ways his regular position hadn't been for years. Amanda didn't return to the project room that day, though Ms. Patel appeared twice to check on resources and answer administrative questions. Eric found himself glancing toward the door. Whenever it opened, a reflex he sternly suppressed. Their relationship was professional, their personal connection a momentary aberration. The sooner he internalized that reality, the better. Home that evening, Eric explained the project dinner to Sophie, bracing for disappointment about their missed library night. To his surprise, she took the news calmly. It's okay, Ba. We can go to the library Thursday instead. She looked up from her homework with earnest eyes. Is the dinner with Amanda? Ms. Reynolds, yes, and the rest of the team and some important people from the company. Eric busied himself preparing dinner, avoiding Sophie's too perceptive gaze. It's just work. If you say so, Sophie returned to her spelling words, a small smile playing at her lips that reminded Eric painfully of Sarah. Can Mrs. Chen make me mac and cheese for dinner that night? She makes it better than you. Brutal honesty from my own daughter. Eric clutched his heart in mock pain, winning a giggle from Sophie. Yes, I'll ask her to make the superior mac and cheese, and I'll try not to be too jealous. Later, tucking Sophie into bed, Eric found himself studying her face in the soft glow of her nightlight. She was growing so quickly, changing from the toddler Sarah had known into her own person. Would Sarah recognize their daughter now? Would she approve of how he was raising her? You're thinking about Mommy again. Sophie's voice was soft with sleepiness. You get a certain look. Eric smoothed her hair back from her forehead. You're too smart for your own good, you know that. That's what Mrs. Abernathy says at school, too. Sophie yawned. Do you think Mommy would like Amanda? The question jolted Eric. Why do you ask that? Because you seem different when you talk about her, like maybe you like her. Children's perception could be unnervingly accurate. Eric chose his words carefully. Ms. Reynolds is my boss, Sophie, an important person at my company. That's all. Okay. Sophie's eyes were drifting closed. But Mommy would want you to be happy again. She told me to take care of you before she went to heaven. Eric's throat constricted. She did. In the hospital. She said, take care of Daddy, he'll need extra love. And I promised I would. Sophie's voice faded as sleep claimed her. I'm keeping my promise, and Eric sat motionless beside her bed, tears burning behind his eyes. Sarah had known she was leaving them, had thought of his future even in her final moments, had worried about his happiness. Across the city, Amanda Reynolds worked late in her office, a habit that had intensified since her mother's death. The penthouse felt too empty, too quiet, and its luxury unable to fill the space left by Catherine's absence. Work at least was familiar territory. Work didn't leave. Work didn't die unexpectedly and leave voice messages you couldn't bring yourself to delete. The Phoenix project files lay spread across her desk, technical specifications and market projections she'd reviewed a dozen times. Her attention kept drifting to the personnel files, specifically to Eric Taylor's. His professional history was exemplary, but conventional MIT graduate, 5 years at a Boston firm before joining Reynolds Technologies following his wife's death. Consistent performance reviews, praising his technical abilities and work ethic. 3 declined promotions. Nothing that explained the strange connection she'd felt with him in the car that night or her ongoing preoccupation with their interactions. Amanda closed the file with a decisive motion. This fixation was unprofessional and unproductive. Eric Taylor was an employee valuable for his skills and contribution to Phoenix. Nothing more. The vulnerability she'd shown him had been a momentary lapse induced by grief and alcohol. It would not be repeated. Her phone buzzed Priya, checking if she needed anything before leaving for the day. Amanda dismissed her with thanks, realizing she was the last person remaining on the executive floor. Again. The digital clock on her desk read 8:45 p.m. With a sigh, Amanda began gathering her things. The penthouse awaited its perfect emptiness, a reflection of the life she'd built. Success without connection, as her mother had said, an achievement and a warning in one. Wednesday's team dinner arrived with spring rain sheeting down Chicago's glass towers. Eric navigated through the downpour to the Palmer House, arriving precisely at 7 p.m. despite the weather. The historic hotel's ornate lobby welcomed him with warmth and old-world elegance, a dramatic contrast to Reynolds Technologies' sleek modernism. The private dining room already hummed with conversation when Eric entered. His teammates clustered near the bar, while board members and executives formed their own distinct orbit. Amanda stood among the latter group, engaged in conversation with an older man Eric recognized as the board chairman. She wore a simple black dress that somehow conveyed both authority and elegance, her only adornment a strand of pearls that had perhaps been her mother's. Kaminsky appeared at Eric's side, pressing a drink into his hand. "Gotch neat. You look like you need it." Not much of a drinker these days. Eric accepted the glass nonetheless, having no intention of consuming it. Impressive turnout. Phoenix has the board's full attention. Reynolds has staked her reputation on its success. Kaminsky nodded toward Amanda. She's been making the rounds all evening, very focused on getting buy-in from the old guard. Eric observed her subtle navigation of the room, the practiced ease with which she engaged each person. There was no sign of the vulnerable woman from the gala, no hint of grief or uncertainty. Amanda Reynolds was performing her role flawlessly. Dinner proceeded with predictable corporate ritual, strategic seating arrangements, carefully cultivated, small talk, subtle hierarchies reinforced through 1,000 tiny interactions. Eric found himself placed between a senior developer from his team and a board member's wife, conversation restricted to safe topics like Chicago architecture and recent technology trends. From his position, he could see Amanda at the head table, fully engaged in what appeared to be an intense discussion about market strategy with 2 board members. She managed the conversation with skill, neither dominating nor deferring, her points made with precision and supported by data she recalled without reference to notes. Midway through the main course, Eric's phone vibrated in his pocket. He discreetly checked it beneath the table, a text from Mrs. Chen. "Sophie not feeling well. Fever 101, asking for you." Parental alarms surged through him. Sophie rarely got sick, and she never complained unless she felt truly awful. He needed to get home. Eric excused himself from the table and moved toward Kaminsky, who was supervising the event. "I have to leave. Family emergency. My daughter's ill." Kaminsky frowned, glancing toward the head table. "Middle of dinner, Reynolds won't be pleased. Sophie has a fever. She's asking for me." Eric kept his voice level but firm. "Please convey my apologies to Ms. Reynolds and the team." "Your call," Kaminsky shrugged, disappointment evident. "But first impressions matter on special projects. The board is watching." Eric hesitated, torn between professional obligation and parental duty. The choice crystallized when he thought of Sophie alone and sick waiting for him. I understand. I still need to go. He turned to leave, almost colliding with Amanda, who had approached unnoticed during their exchange. Is everything all right, Mr. Taylor? Her tone was neutral, but her eyes sharp, taking in his obvious preparation to depart. My daughter is ill. I need to get home to her. Eric met her gaze directly and unapologetic. I'm sorry to leave early. Something shifted in Amanda's expression. How severe? Fever of 101. She's asking for me specifically, which she rarely does. Amanda nodded, decision made. Of course you should go. Family comes first. She turned to Kaminsky. Richard, see that, Mr. Taylor gets a car service in this weather. We can't have him delayed by waiting for transportation. Kaminsky blinked, clearly surprised by her response. Right away. Amanda returned her attention to Eric. I hope Sophie feels better soon. Please don't worry about tonight. We'll brief you on anything you miss. The consideration was unexpected, her genuine concern even more so. Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. 20 minutes later, Eric was in a company car heading toward his apartment, rain drumming on the roof as Chicago's lights blurred past the windows. The driver maintained a respectful silence, allowing Eric's thoughts to circle between concern for Sophie and surprise at Amanda's reaction. She'd supported his departure without hesitation. Family comes first. The statement seemed incongruous coming from a CEO legendary for her demanding standards and relentless work ethic. Yet there had been no artifice in her response, no calculation, just understanding. The apartment building came into view, unremarkable in the rain. Eric thanked the driver and hurried inside, taking the stairs two at a time rather than waiting for the elevator. Outside his door, he paused to compose himself, not wanting to alarm Sophie with his anxiety. Mrs. Chen opened the door before he could use his key, her round face creased with concern. She's on the couch. Fever came on suddenly after dinner. I gave her children's Tylenol about an hour ago. Sophie lay curled beneath her favorite blanket, cheeks flushed, dark curls damp against her forehead. She looked small and vulnerable in a way that squeezed Eric's heart. At the sound of his entrance, she opened her eyes. Bah, you came home. Her voice was raspy, relief evident. Of course I came home. Eric knelt beside her, pressing his lips to her forehead to gauge her temperature, an old habit from his own childhood. Still warm, but not dangerously so. I'll always come when you need me, Mrs. Chen discreetly withdrew to the kitchen, returning with a fresh cold compress and a glass of water before gathering her things to leave. Call if you need anything, Eric, anytime. After she left, Eric settled beside Sophie on the couch, adjusting her position so her head rested in his lap. How are you feeling, sunshine? Hot, and my throat hurts. She snuggled closer to him. Did you leave your important dinner because of me? Yes, but that's exactly what I should have done. Eric stroked her hair gently. You're more important than any dinner. Was Amanda there? Is she mad you left? Even feverish Sophie remained fixated on Amanda Reynolds. The persistence would have amused Eric if he weren't so concerned about her health. Ms. Reynolds was there, and no, she's not mad. She's the one who arranged the car to bring me home faster. Sophie's eyes widened slightly. She did. That was nice of her. Yes, it was. Eric adjusted the cold compress on her forehead. She also said she hopes you feel better soon. I like her. Sophie's declaration was simple but definitive. Even though I haven't met her, you're making awfully big decisions about people you've never met. Eric kept his tone light despite the unease stirring beneath his words. Sophie's attachment to the idea of Amanda, a woman she knew only through his mentions, felt significant in ways he couldn't articulate. I'm perceptive, Sophie reminded him solemnly, using her new vocabulary word. Like how I can tell you're worried but trying not to show it. Eric smiled despite himself. You're perceptive and too smart for your own good. A dangerous combination. Sophie's answering smile was weak but genuine. Can I have a story, the one about the girl who finds the secret door? Eric began the familiar tale, one of Sarah's creations that he'd maintained as part of Sophie's bedtime ritual. As he spoke, Sophie's eyelids grew heavy, her breathing deepening as the medicine and exhaustion pulled her towards sleep. Within minutes, she was dozing against him, warm but peaceful. Eric continued the story anyway, the words a comfort to himself as much as to his sleeping daughter. The apartment fell silent except for his soft voice in the rain against the windows. In that moment, his world contracted to this small living room, this small girl, this enduring love that had sustained him through grief and loneliness. Nothing was more important than this. Not Phoenix, not Reynolds Technologies, not Amanda Reynolds with her pearls and her unexpected compassion. Sophie was his center, his purpose. Everything else, including the strange connection he felt with his CEO, was peripheral. Yet as the night deepened and Sophie slept against him, Eric found his thoughts returning to Amanda, to the flash of genuine concern in her eyes when he'd mentioned Sophie's illness, to her immediate prioritization of his daughter's needs over the corporate dinner. Small moments that revealed character more clearly than any corporate biography or press release. Who was Amanda Reynolds beneath the CEO persona? The question lingered as Eric finally carried Sophie to her bed, tucking her beneath her favorite quilt. He checked her temperature, again nearly normal now, and left a glass of water on her nightstand before retreating to his own bedroom. Sleep came fitfully interrupted by regular checks on Sophie and dreams that blended memories of Sarah with images of Amanda, as if his unconscious mind was attempting connections his waking self resisted. By morning, Sophie's fever had broken, though she remained listless. Eric called the office, arranging to work remotely for the day. Ms. Patel answered his call, her efficient voice warming slightly when he explained the situation. Ms. Reynolds mentioned your daughter was ill. She's authorized remote access to the Phoenix servers for today only under strict security protocols. Mr. Kaminsky will contact you with details. Another unexpected accommodation. Eric thanked her, wondering if this flexibility was standard for the Phoenix team or unique to his situation. Kaminsky called 30 minutes later, walking Eric through the secure connection process while delivering a brief summary of the previous evening's developments. Nothing major happened after you left. Reynolds gave a speech about Phoenix positioning the company at the forefront of healthcare security. Standard visionary CEO stuff, but the board seemed impressed. Once connected, Eric divided his attention between the project and Sophie, who spent the day on the couch with books and quiet activities. By afternoon, her energy was returning, though he decided to keep her home from school the following day as a precaution. Around 3 o'clock, as Eric reviewed security protocols, while Sophie napped, his phone displayed an unexpected notification. A text message from an unlisted number. "How is Sophie today?" AR, Amanda Reynolds, had texted him personally about his daughter. Eric stared at the message, uncertain how to interpret this breach of normal corporate hierarchy. Was it professional concern from a project leader? Personal interest from the woman who had shared her grief with him in a midnight car ride? Something in between? He replied with professional brevity. "Much improved, thank you. Fever broke this morning, planning to work normally tomorrow." The response came quickly. "Good to hear. Take tomorrow if needed. Project will manage." Again, that unexpected flexibility, that consideration for his parental role. Eric found himself typing before fully considering the implications. "Sophie appreciated your concern. She's decided she likes you despite never having met you." He hesitated before sending, wondering if the message crossed professional boundaries. It felt too personal, too revealing of his private conversations with his daughter. Yet something compelled him to share this small truth with Amanda. Her reply appeared several minutes later. "High praise from a discerning critic. I'm honored." The brief exchange left Eric with a lingering warmth he couldn't or wouldn't analyze too closely. He returned to his work, pushing the interaction to the background of his thoughts. Sophie recovered fully by Friday, returning to school with her usual enthusiasm. The Phoenix project settled into intense but productive rhythms, the team coalescing around their shared mission. Eric found himself energized by the technical challenges and the collaborative environment, his skills stretched in ways that satisfied his long-dormant professional ambitions. Amanda maintained regular presence in the project room, typically arriving unannounced to review progress and provide strategic direction. Her interactions remained strictly professional, focused on deliverables, timelines, and technical specifications. Yet Eric noticed subtle differences in how she engaged with him compared to the rest of the team. A fraction more eye contact, slightly longer conversations, small acknowledgments of his contributions that felt distinct from her general leadership style. Or perhaps he was imagining significance where none existed, his perception colored by their shared moment of vulnerability in the strange text exchange about Sophie. 3 weeks into the project, as April eased toward May, the team faced their first major technical obstacle. A core security protocol designed to manage patient data access while maintaining HIPAA compliance was failing in simulation testing, creating potential vulnerabilities that would be catastrophic if exploited in a real-world environment. After 2 days of collective troubleshooting yielded no solution, tension in the project room reached palpable levels. Kaminsky paced between workstations, his usual composure fraying. "We need answers, people. Reynolds is briefing the board on Monday. We cannot report this kind of fundamental flaw in the architecture." The pressure fell heavily on Eric, whose encryption expertise made him the natural lead for resolving the security issue. He'd been working nearly continuously, staying late after others left, approaching the problem from multiple angles without success. Friday evening found him alone in the project room, surrounded by empty coffee cups, the code blurring before his tired eyes. He'd arranged for Sophie to have a sleepover with her friend Zoe, buying himself the night to solve the problem if possible. Past midnight exhaustion competing with determination, Eric finally identified the elusive flaw, an elegant but fundamentally misaligned interaction between two security layers that created microscopic but exploitable gaps in the encryption. The solution once found was surprisingly straightforward. Eric implemented the fix, ran the simulation tests, and watched with growing elation as each test returned successful results. By 2 a.m., he had fully resolved the issue, documented the solution, and prepared a comprehensive briefing for the team. Relief washed through him as he shut down his workstation, gathering his things to head home for a few hours' sleep before retrieving Sophie in the morning. In the dim light of the after-hours security system, Eric nearly missed the figure standing in the doorway. Amanda Reynolds leaned against the frame, arms crossed, observing him with an unreadable expression. "Ms. Reynolds," Eric straightened, surprise jolting through his fatigue. "I didn't realize anyone else was still here." Likewise. Amanda entered the room, moving toward his workstation. "It's 2 a.m., Mr. Taylor. Most people are home at this hour." Most people weren't facing a critical security flaw with a Monday board briefing looming. Eric gestured to a screen where the successful test results still displayed. "But it's resolved now. All tests passing with full security integrity." Amanda studied the results, genuine interest evident beneath her professional demeanor. "You found the solution alone. Sometimes fresh eyes help, or in this case, extremely tired eyes seeing things from a different angle." The joke slipped out before Eric could censor himself, fatigue lowering his usual professional filters. To his surprise, Amanda's lips curved in a small but genuine smile. Exhaustion as a troubleshooting strategy. Unconventional but effective, apparently. She pulled up a chair beside him, her proximity unexpected in the empty building. "Show me what you found." For the next 30 minutes, Eric walked her through the technical details of the flaw in his solution. Amanda followed with surprising technical acumen, asking insightful questions that revealed deeper understanding than he'd anticipated from a CEO. "I started in engineering before moving to management," she explained, catching his poorly concealed surprise. "MIT class of '09. I still try to keep my technical skills from completely atrophying, though I'm woefully behind on current methodologies." This glimpse of Amanda's background, freely offered, felt significant. A small piece of herself revealed a minor but deliberate lowering of her professional guard. "You clearly retained more than basics." Eric saved his documentation, conscious of her continued proximity. "This solution will hold. The architecture is sound." "I believe you." Amanda leaned back, studying him with newfound curiosity. "You've dedicated significant personal time to this issue, missing your daughter's evening, working until 2 a.m. Why?" The question caught Eric off guard. "Because it's my job. Because the project is important." Many people would have left the problem for Monday or distributed the workload to the team. You took personal responsibility. Amanda's gaze was penetrating, as if she were trying to solve a different kind of puzzle. "That's increasingly rare." Eric shrugged, uncomfortable with the analysis of his work ethic. "Sophie's at a sleepover. I had the time." "Ah." Amanda nodded, something like understanding flickering across her features. "Always the parent first. Even your professional dedication is framed through that lens." Was there judgment in her observation? Eric couldn't tell. "Being a father is my most important role. Everything else arranges itself around that central fact." "It's admirable." Amanda rose, creating distance between them. "Ineffective, apparently. This solution may have saved the project significant delays and potential reputational damage. She moved toward the door, then paused. You should go home, Mr. Taylor. Get some rest. And thank you for your dedication to Phoenix. And you? The question emerged before Eric could reconsider it. It's 2:30 a.m. Why are you still here? Amanda's expression shifted, vulnerability briefly visible before her professional mask slid back into place. The penthouse is very quiet these days. The simple statement contained volumes. Grief, loneliness. The emptiness of success without connection. Eric recognized the sentiment immediately, having lived it himself in the raw months after Sarah's death. I understand. He offered nothing more, no platitudes or solutions, just acknowledgement of her unstated pain. Amanda nodded once, accepting his response. Good night, Mr. Taylor. She departed, heels clicking softly against the polished floor, leaving Eric alone with his completed work and a growing certainty that something was shifting between them, something neither had intended, but neither seemed able to prevent. Monday morning brought triumph to the Phoenix Project team. Eric's weekend breakthrough transformed the mood in the secure room, tension replaced by renewed confidence as he walked the team through his solution. Even Kaminsky's perpetual frown eased as the simulation tests ran flawlessly in front of the assembled group. This is exceptional work, Kaminsky announced, the closest to enthusiasm his voice seemed capable of reaching. Reynolds will be presenting this to the board at 11. Taylor, you'll join her to address technical questions. The directive caught Eric off guard. Board presentations weren't typically the domain of mid-level engineers, no matter how critical their contributions. Shouldn't you be handling that as project manager? Reynolds specifically requested you. Kaminsky's expression suggested this deviation from protocol didn't entirely please him. Apparently, she thinks the board will appreciate hearing directly from the person who solved our encryption issue. By 10:30, Eric found himself in an unfamiliar position, waiting outside the executive boardroom, reviewing his technical notes one last time. The corridor gleamed with understated luxury oil paintings of former chairmen, observing his discomfort with aristocratic detachment. Amanda emerged from the elevator, tablet in hand, dressed in a charcoal suit that somehow managed to be both authoritative and elegant. She appeared perfectly composed until she spotted him, her stride faltering for just a moment before resuming its confident rhythm. Mr. Taylor, prepared. Her tone was brisk, but her eyes conveyed something warmer. Perhaps appreciation, perhaps simply acknowledgement of their shared late-night encounter. As I'll ever be. Eric tucked his notes into his jacket pocket. I don't usually present to board members. They're just people with expensive watches who ask obvious questions slowly and expect immediate answers. The corner of Amanda's mouth twitched upward. Follow my lead, speak only when addressed directly, and remember that none of them understand the technology nearly as well as you do. With that, she pushed open the mahogany doors, leading him into Reynolds Technologies' inner sanctum. The boardroom matched Eric's expectations, imposingly large, meticulously furnished, dominated by a gleaming table where 12 people sat, arrayed like jurors. Most were men over 60, their expressions cultivated to reveal nothing while judging everything. At the head of the table, Chairman James Harrington, silver-haired, hawk-nosed, famously ruthless, nodded to acknowledge Amanda's entrance. Miss Reynolds, right on schedule as always. His gaze shifted to Eric. And this is Eric Taylor, the encryption specialist who resolved our HIPAA compliance issue. Amanda's voice carried perfectly throughout the room without seeming raised. Mr. Taylor will address any technical questions about the security architecture. For 40 minutes, Amanda guided the board through the Phoenix Project's progress challenges and strategic implications. Her command of both business strategy and technical details impressed even Eric, who witnessed the full scope of her expertise for the first time. She navigated questions with precision, occasionally deferring the more technical inquiries to Eric, who found himself responding with unexpected confidence. So you're confident the system cannot be breached? A board member with steel-rimmed glasses. Westfield, according to his nameplate, fixed Eric with a penetrating stare. No security system is impenetrable. Eric met the man's gaze steadily. But Phoenix employs multiple redundant protection layers with continuously evolving encryption. Any breach would trigger immediate isolation protocols and require more computing power than is currently available outside government agencies. Amanda nodded almost imperceptibly approval of his honest but reassuring assessment. Chairman Harrington leaned forward. Ms. Reynolds, you've staked considerable company resources and your own reputation on Phoenix. If successful, you project it will increase market valuation by 20% within 18 months. That's ambitious. It's realistic. Amanda didn't flinch under his scrutiny. Phoenix doesn't just open new market opportunities in healthcare. It positions Reynolds Technologies as the industry leader in secure data management. The projections are conservative. And if it fails, Harrington's question hung in the air. It won't. Amanda's certainty left no room for doubt. We've assembled the best team in the industry. Phoenix will deliver as promised. The presentation concluded with tentative approval for continued resource allocation pending the first functional prototype demonstration scheduled for June. As they exited the boardroom, Eric could feel the weight of expectation settling more heavily on his shoulders. Amanda had essentially guaranteed success that now depended substantially on his encryption architecture. In the elevator alone together for the first time since their 2 a.m. encounter, Amanda exhaled slowly. That went better than expected. Westfield usually asks at least 3 unnecessarily technical questions to prove he once took a computer science course in 1982. The rare glimpse of humor caught Eric by surprise. You were impressive in there. The way you balanced technical detail with business strategy. Years of practice. Amanda glanced at him. You did well yourself, direct, honest, but confident. The board responds to that better than excessive reassurance. The elevator stopped at the Phoenix project floor. As Eric moved to exit, Amanda spoke again. We're hosting potential healthcare clients next week, a demonstration of the early framework. I'd like you to present the security architecture. He hesitated in the doorway. Wouldn't that usually fall to Kaminsky? Usually, yes, but you understand the system best, and Amanda seemed to choose her next words carefully. You explain complex concepts with unusual clarity. That's valuable when dealing with non-technical executives. The doors began to close. Eric stepped back to let them, sensing their conversation wasn't finished. One more thing. Amanda's professional mask slipped just slightly. How is Sophie? Fully recovered. Back to correcting my math when we do her homework. The mention of his daughter in this context still felt strangely intimate. She asked about you again. Did she? Something softened in Amanda's expression. What did she want to know? If you liked ice cream, apparently it's her litmus test for trustworthy adults. Amanda's unexpected laugh was brief but genuine. Tell her yes, particularly dark chocolate with sea salt. That's very specific. I'm very specific about most things, Mr. Taylor. The elevator reached the executive floor. Good day, and thank you again for your contribution. As the doors closed between them, Eric found himself wondering about Amanda Reynolds and dark chocolate ice cream with sea salt. Such a personal, specific preference from a woman who revealed so little of herself to the world. May unfolded with Phoenix accelerating toward its first client demonstration. The team worked in focused harmony, Eric's encryption breakthrough having earned him unspoken status as the project's technical anchor. Kaminsky still managed operations, but increasingly deferred to Eric on security architecture decisions. Amanda's presence in the project room became more frequent, her reviews more detailed. She participated in technical discussions with unexpected depth, occasionally referencing her engineering background when challenging proposed solutions. Her interactions with Eric maintained professional boundaries, but carried an undercurrent of something different, respect layered with an awareness that transcended their official roles. The test systems ran increasingly complex simulations, each success building confidence in the core architecture. By mid-month, the team had developed a functional demo for the healthcare executives scheduled to visit Reynolds Technologies the following week. The evening before the demonstration, Eric found himself alone in the project room, running final security checks on the demo environment. Sophie was spending the night at a friend's birthday sleepover, giving him uninterrupted hours to ensure every detail was perfect. The responsibility weighed heavily. Amanda had personally vouched for Phoenix to the board, had guaranteed its success. His work needed to be flawless. Near midnight, the security door opened. Amanda entered still in her business attire despite the late hour, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She placed one beside Eric's keyboard without comment, then took the chair next to his. I assumed you'd still be here. She sipped from her own cup. The logs show you haven't left the building since 8 this morning. Eric accepted the coffee gratefully. Final security checks. Everything needs to be perfect for tomorrow. The system is sound. You've tested it thoroughly. Amanda studied the screens displaying simulation results. You don't need to stay this late. Sophie's at a sleepover. I have the time. Eric echoed his explanation from their previous late-night encounter, realizing as he said it how often he framed his professional choices through the lens of his daughter. Amanda noted the parallel as well. Always the father first. Her tone held no criticism, only observation. It's interesting how completely you've integrated that identity. Most people compartmentalize professional, self-personal, self-parental self. For you, they're inseparable. Eric considered this assessment. After Sarah died, being Sophie's father was the only identity that mattered. Everything else became secondary. And now, the question hung between them, more personal than their professional relationship warranted. Eric found himself answering anyway. Now, I'm remembering there are other parts of me. The engineer, the problem solver, the adult who occasionally has conversations that don't involve animated movies. Amanda smiled faintly. Progress. What about you? Eric ventured into territory they'd carefully avoided since the night of the gala. Has anything changed since your mother passed? For a moment, he thought he'd overstepped. Amanda's expression closed, her CEO mask sliding back into place. Then surprisingly, she answered, "Everything has changed, and nothing." She set her coffee down precisely. "I still work the same hours, still make the same decisions, still return to an empty penthouse, but there's a hollowness to it now, as if I'm performing a role rather than living a life." The admission held such raw honesty that Eric remained silent, giving her words a space they deserved. "My mother used to say I was building a perfect cage." Amanda's gaze fixed on the security simulations running across the screens. "Beautiful, impressive, but still a cage. She wanted more from me. Different, but I never understood what that meant until she was gone. And now I wonder." She turned to face him directly. "What does Sophie want to be when she grows up?" The sudden shift surprised him. "A paleontologist, astronaut, veterinarian, last I checked. It changes weekly." "But you encourage all those versions, don't you? You don't tell her to choose just one path to narrow her options for efficiency's sake." Amanda's expression turned reflective. "My father charted my course from childhood. MIT, engineering, management, success defined by very specific metrics. My mother objected, but quietly. She believed in choice above all else." "What would you have chosen without his influence?" "That's just it. I don't know." Amanda straightened, vulnerability disappearing beneath professional composure. "This is inappropriate conversation for colleagues. I apologize. We're colleagues who've seen each other at 2 in the morning discussing personal loss in empty homes." Eric held her gaze steadily. "I think we've established that our relationship has unusual dimensions." Something flickered in Amanda's eyes, recognition, perhaps even gratitude for his directness. "Nevertheless, we should focus on tomorrow's demonstration." They spent another hour reviewing the presentation materials, their conversation returning to safer technical ground. Yet something had shifted between them, another layer of armor, set aside, another glimpse of the person behind the CEO title. As they prepared to leave, Amanda paused at the door. "Mr. Taylor." Eric. His first name sounded different in her voice. "Thank you for your discretion. About everything. Always." The simple promise carried weight beyond its single word. The client demonstration the following day exceeded even the most optimistic projections. 5 healthcare executives witnessed Phoenix's capabilities, their skepticism visibly transforming to enthusiasm as Eric explained the security architecture. Amanda orchestrated the presentation, masterfully highlighting business advantages while allowing her technical team to showcase the system's innovation. The lead executive CEO of Midwest Healthcare Networks leaned forward during Eric's encryption demonstration. "This level of security while maintaining access flexibility, it's precisely what the industry needs. When can we begin implementation testing?" Amanda fielded the question smoothly. "We're targeting August for beta deployment with select partners. MHN would be an ideal candidate given your multi-state presence and diverse patient data requirements." By the time the executives departed, even Kaminsky's perpetual reserve had cracked into something resembling excitement. "They're practically begging to sign contracts. The board will be pleased." The Phoenix team celebrated their success with cautious optimism, aware that much work remained before actual deployment. Eric found himself the recipient of congratulations from colleagues who had previously viewed him as competent but unremarkable. His role in the project's success had elevated his standing throughout the company, creating opportunities he'd previously avoided. As the team dispersed that evening, Amanda appeared at his workstation. "Excellent work today." The encryption explanation was perfectly calibrated for the audience, technical enough to establish credibility, accessible enough to demonstrate value. "Thank you. It helped that the system actually works." Eric closed his laptop, preparing to head home to Sophie. The client reaction exceeded expectations. It did. Amanda hesitated, then continued with careful neutrality. "The team is having dinner to celebrate. You are welcome to join, of course." Eric recognized the invitation wasn't merely professional courtesy. "I wish I could, but I promised Sophie we'd have special Friday pizza night. After missing bedtime yesterday because of preparations, I can't disappoint her again." He expected Amanda to accept his excuse professionally. Instead, she surprised him. What if I joined you for pizza?" The suggestion was so unexpected that Eric momentarily lost his capacity for speech. Amanda Reynolds, CEO, Iron Queen, architect of billion-dollar strategies, was proposing pizza night with him and his 6-year-old daughter. She misinterpreted his silence as rejection. "That was inappropriate. Please disregard." "No, it's not that." Eric recovered his composure. "I'm just surprised. It's not exactly a corporate dinner at the Palmer House." "That's rather the point." A hint of vulnerability crept into Amanda's voice. "I've had enough corporate dinners to last several lifetimes. But I haven't had pizza with a 6-year-old paleontologist, astronaut, veterinarian, ever." The image was so incongruous yet somehow perfect that Eric found himself nodding. "Sophie would be thrilled. She's been asking about you for weeks." "She has." Amanda couldn't quite disguise her surprise. "You made quite an impression without ever meeting her. The car service when she was sick asking about her recovery. She's decided you're her friend." Amanda's expression softened. "Then I shouldn't disappoint her, if you're certain it's not an imposition." 2 hours later, Eric found himself in the surreal position of watching Amanda Reynolds sitting cross-legged on his living room floor, listening with complete attention as Sophie explained the intricate dinosaur hierarchy she'd created. Amanda had arrived bearing gifts, a geology kit for Sophie, since paleontologists need to understand rocks, and a bottle of wine for Eric. She'd changed from her business attire into dark jeans and a simple blue sweater, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. The transformation was striking. Without the armor of her CEO persona, she appeared younger, more accessible, though no less impressive. Sophie had initially been shy, hiding partially behind Eric when Amanda arrived. But the geology kit had broken the ice immediately, and within 20 minutes his daughter was chattering away as if she'd known Amanda for years. "This is a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but I call him Rex because that's his name, not just his species." Sophie pointed to her favorite plastic dinosaur. "He's a carnivore, which means he eats meat. But in my stories, he's vegetarian because he made friends with the plant eaters and didn't want to eat his friends." Amanda nodded seriously. "That shows excellent character development. Friendship-changing fundamental behavior is very sophisticated storytelling." Sophie beamed at the praise. "Do you tell stories?" "Not as creative as yours. My stories are mostly about business strategies and market projections." Amanda smiled. "Much less interesting than vegetarian T-Rexes." "Boss says your job is very important, that you run an entire company." Sophie studied Amanda with frank curiosity. "Is it hard?" "Sometimes." Amanda considered the question with the same seriousness she'd give a board member. "The hardest part isn't the work itself, but remembering why the work matters." "Why does it matter?" Eric started to intervene. Sophie's questions could become relentless, but Amanda didn't seem to mind. "That's the question, isn't it?" She leaned forward conspiratorially. "Some days I'm not entirely sure, but on good days I remember it's because we're building things that help people live better lives. Like Ba does." Sophie nodded wisely. "He fixes problems so doctors can help sick people." "Exactly like your Ba does." Amanda's gaze shifted to Eric, something warm in her expression. "He's very good at fixing important problems." The evening progressed with surprising ease. They ate pizza on the living room floor, Amanda insisting she preferred it to the kitchen table, and watched Sophie's current favorite animated film. Eric observed with fascination as Amanda Reynolds' feared CEO laughed genuinely at cartoon jokes and asked Sophie insightful questions about the plot. After Sophie reluctantly went to bed, extracted only after making Amanda promise to visit again soon, Eric found himself alone with Amanda in his modest living room, the remains of their impromptu dinner party scattered around them. "Thank you for this." Amanda cradled a glass of wine, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. I can't remember the last time I spent an evening so simply." Sophie is pretty magical that way. Eric began gathering paper plates. "She has a gift for pulling people into her world." "She's extraordinary." Amanda's voice softened. "She reminds me of you. The same thoughtfulness, the same attention to detail. But with a freedom you don't allow yourself." The observation was surprisingly perceptive. Children have that luxury. Some adults do too. Amanda set down her wine, helping him collect the dinner debris, despite his protests. "Your home feels so alive, Eric. So full of purpose. It's not just decorated, it's inhabited." Eric glanced around his apartment, modest by any standards, certainly humble, compared to Amanda's penthouse. But she was right. Every surface held evidence of the life he and Sophie had built together. Her artwork on the refrigerator, books stacked on end tables, the basket of toys in the corner. Nothing designer, nothing perfect, but undeniably a home. "After Sarah died, I focused on making this place feel safe for Sophie." Eric carried plates to the kitchen, Amanda following with the empty glasses. "Somewhere stable when everything else had changed." "You've succeeded." Amanda leaned against the counter, watching him rinse dishes. "She's remarkably well adjusted for a child who's experienced such loss." "She doesn't remember Sarah clearly, just impressions, feelings." Eric felt the familiar ache that accompanied these conversations. "Sometimes that seems worse, that she'll grow up with no real memories of her mother. But she has you." Amanda's voice was gentle. "And you carry Sarah with you in how you raise her. The stories you tell, the traditions you maintain. She knows her mother through you." The insight struck deep, more comforting than the well-meaning platitudes Eric had heard from others over the years. "I haven't thought of it that way. My mother used to say we never truly lose people." Amanda's gaze grew distant. "Their love becomes part of our foundation, supporting us even when they're gone." "Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman." "She was. I wish I'd listened to her more while I had the chance." Amanda glanced at her watch, reluctance evident in her expression. "It's getting late. I should go." At the door, she paused. "Thank you again for sharing your evening, your home, your daughter." "You're welcome here anytime." The offer emerged naturally, surprising them both with its sincerity. "Sophie will demand a rematch at Dinosaur Classification." Amanda smiled, the expression transforming her face. "I'd like that." She hesitated, then added softly, "Good night, Eric." "Good night, Amanda." After she left, Eric stood in the doorway longer than necessary, processing the strange new reality where Amanda Reynolds had sat on his living room floor, charmed his daughter, and helped clean up after pizza. The boundaries between their worlds, professional and personal, CEO and engineer, wealthy executive and single father, had blurred beyond recognition. The implications both exhilarated and terrified him. June brought accelerating momentum to the Phoenix project. The successful client demonstration had generated substantial interest throughout the healthcare industry, with 3 major systems requesting early implementation partnerships. The board approved expanded resources, and Kaminsky added 2 junior engineers to support the growing workload. Amanda's leadership style shifted subtly following their pizza night, still demanding excellence, but with increased awareness of the team's human dimensions. She scheduled team meals, acknowledged personal milestones, and instituted family-friendly working hours whenever possible. The changes created an environment where dedication flowed from loyalty rather than fear. Productivity increasing despite, or perhaps because of, the more balanced approach. Her interactions with Eric maintained professional boundaries within the office, though occasional moments, a shared glance during meetings, a brief touch when reviewing documents, hinted at their evolving connection. They established an unspoken rule at Reynolds Technologies: they were colleagues first, their personal relationship invisible to others. But outside the office, that relationship deepened. Amanda joined them for another pizza night, then for Sunday afternoon at the Museum of Science and Industry, where Sophie appointed herself tour guide. Small casual interactions that would have seemed impossible months earlier became comfortable, even expected. Sophie blossomed under Amanda's attention, absorbing her knowledge of geology, business, and technology with eager curiosity. For her part, Amanda revealed unexpected patience, answering endless questions with thoughtful consideration rather than condescension. "Why don't you have children?" Sophie asked one evening as Amanda helped her assemble a model dinosaur skeleton. "You're really good with kids." Eric nearly choked on his coffee at the directness of the question, but Amanda answered without hesitation. "I was very focused on my career. Building the company took all my time and energy." She carefully attached a tiny vertebra to the model spine. "And I hadn't met the right person to have a family with." "But you could still have kids now, right?" Sophie persisted. "Mrs. Abernathy at school says her sister had a baby when she was 42. "Technically, yes." Amanda's fingers stilled on the model. "But having children is a serious decision. It means prioritizing someone else's needs above your own always, like your father does for you." Sophie considered this solemnly. "You could do that. You're smart, and you have a nice voice for bedtime stories. Thank you for the vote of confidence." Amanda smiled, though something wistful flickered in her eyes. Maybe in another life. Eric, witnessing the exchange from the kitchen doorway, felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. The image of Amanda reading bedtime stories of her prioritizing family above career stirred emotions he wasn't prepared to examine. Later, after Sophie was asleep, they sat on a small balcony, the summer evening warm around them. "I'm sorry about Sophie's interrogation. She doesn't understand boundaries yet." "Don't apologize. Her questions are refreshingly direct." Amanda sipped her wine, gazing at the limited view of Chicago's skyline visible from his neighborhood. "Most adults spend so much energy avoiding the questions that matter." "And was that a question that matters?" Amanda turned to him, moonlight silvering her profile. "Perhaps. It made me consider choices I've never fully examined. Roads not taken. It's not too late, you know." Eric spoke carefully, aware they were navigating intimate territory. "For those roads, if they're ones you want to travel." "Isn't it?" Her voice quieted. "I'm 38, Eric. I've built my life around achievement, not nurturing. I'm not sure I could reconstruct myself so fundamentally at this point." "People rebuild themselves all the time. After loss. After change." Eric thought of his own reconstruction after Sarah's death. "Sometimes we don't choose the rebuilding it's forced upon us, but sometimes we get to decide who we become next." Amanda studied him thoughtfully. "You've rebuilt yourself remarkably well." "Not without help, not without Sophie." Eric hesitated, then added softly, "Not without time." The conversation drifted to lighter topics, but something significant had been acknowledged between them. The possibility of change, of new directions, of choices still available despite the paths already taken. As June progressed toward July, Phoenix hit its first major setback. A comprehensive security test revealed vulnerability in the data transmission protocols, not in Eric's encryption architecture, but in how the encrypted data moved between systems. The flaw wasn't catastrophic, but required substantial revision to the framework, potentially delaying the August beta launch. The news hit the team hard, particularly after their streak of successes. Kaminsky delivered the update to Amanda with grim resignation, anticipating her legendary displeasure with anything less than perfection. Instead, she surprised the team by responding with measured calm. "Identify the exact points of vulnerability. Develop 3 potential solutions with associated timelines and resource requirements. We'll reassess the launch schedule once we understand the full scope." Her reaction shifted the team's focus from anxiety to problem solving. Eric led the vulnerability assessment, working closely with the network specialists to map the transmission weaknesses. By week's end, they developed 2 promising solutions, though both would delay the launch by at least 3 weeks. Amanda reviewed their findings in the project room. The team gathered anxiously around the conference table. 3 weeks minimum to implement and test these solutions properly. Kaminsky nodded grimly. "I've reviewed the timelines extensively. There's no responsible way to compress them further without compromising security." "Then we adjust the timeline." Amanda's decision was immediate and definitive. "Phoenix's value lies in its absolute security. We will not compromise that for an arbitrary deadline." The relief in the room was palpable. Eric caught Amanda's eye across the table, his respect for her leadership deepening. She could have demanded the impossible, forced the team to cut corners and to maintain the original schedule. Instead, she'd chosen integrity over expediency, a choice that would cost her politically with the board, but preserve the project's fundamental value. After the meeting, she asked Eric to stay behind. When the room had emptied, she spoke with unusual hesitation. "I have to inform the board about the delay tomorrow. They won't be pleased." The decision was correct. Eric's certainty was absolute. Rushing implementation would create unacceptable risks. "I know, but the board measures success differently." Amanda's expression revealed rare vulnerability. "Harrington in particular will see this as evidence of my soft leadership. He's been skeptical of my management style changes over the past months." The implication was clear. The very changes inspired by their developing relationship, by Amanda's evolving priorities, were now being questioned by those with power over her career. "Would you like me to join the board meeting? Explain the technical necessities," Eric offered, wanting to support her, but uncertain how. Amanda shook her head. "Thank you, but no. This is my responsibility as CEO." She straightened, her momentary vulnerability disappearing beneath professional resolve. "I'll handle Harrington and the board. You focus on implementing the solution." The following day, rumors filtered down from the executive floor. Amanda's meeting with the board had been tense, voices raised behind closed doors. Harrington had apparently questioned not just the timeline adjustment, but her overall leadership, citing concerning changes in management approach and questionable personal priorities. By afternoon, the corporate grapevine reported that Amanda had been given an ultimatum: deliver Phoenix by the original deadline or face a vote of no confidence. The news rippled through the project team, creating renewed anxiety and resentment toward the board's unrealistic demands. Eric tried calling Amanda twice, but reached only her voicemail. When she hadn't appeared in the project room by evening, he made his way to the executive floor, concern overriding protocol. Priya looked up as he approached Amanda's office. "Mr. Taylor, she's not seeing anyone today." "Is she in there?" Eric nodded toward the closed door. Priya hesitated, professional discretion warring with evident concern. "Yes, since the board meeting. She canceled all appointments." "Will you tell her I'm here, please?" Eric waited while Priya sent a message through the intercom system. After a long moment, the assistant nodded reluctantly. "Go ahead." Amanda stood at her window when Eric entered, gazing out at the Chicago skyline. She didn't turn immediately, her reflection in the glass revealing unusual weariness. "The board has mandated we maintain the original timeline." Her voice was controlled, professional. "Regardless of security concerns." Eric moved closer, stopping several feet behind her. "That's irresponsible. Dangerous." According to Harrington, it's decisive leadership versus perfectionist dithering. Amanda finally turned, her expression carefully neutral, despite the strain evident in her posture. "The choice has been made. We'll proceed with the original schedule. Even knowing the security risks, we'll mitigate as much as possible within the time frame." Amanda returned to her desk, creating physical distance between them. "I've authorized unlimited overtime and additional resources. Whatever you need to make this work." Eric studied her, recognizing the retreat into CEO mode, the armor being reconstructed after the board's attack. "Amanda, what aren't you telling me?" Something flickered in her eyes, surprise at his directness, perhaps appreciation for it. "Harrington made it clear that my leadership is under scrutiny, not just regarding Phoenix, but my overall approach. He believes I've become distracted, less focused on company priorities." The implication hung between them, unspoken but understood. Their relationship, whatever it was becoming, had been noticed, judged, found wanting by those with power over Amanda's career. "I see." Eric maintained his composure despite the sudden hollow feeling in his chest. "And your response?" "I reminded the board that Phoenix's development has accelerated under my current leadership approach. That team morale and productivity have improved measurably." Amanda's fingers tapped a precise rhythm on her desk. "I did not discuss my personal life, which remains irrelevant to my professional capabilities. But they've connected the two. Harrington has. Others may follow his lead." Amanda met his gaze directly. "The situation is delicate, Eric. The next few weeks will determine whether I retain my position." The stark reality settled between them. Amanda's career, the empire she'd built, the achievement that defined her identity, was threatened, and their evolving relationship had become a liability in the board's eyes. "What do you need from me?" Eric asked simply. "Professionally, your expertise, your commitment to making Phoenix work within our new constraints." Amanda hesitated. "Personally, space, distance, until this situation stabilizes." The request struck with unexpected force. Eric had known their relationship existed in borrowed time and spaces between professional obligations. But hearing Amanda articulate the necessity of separation still hurt more than anticipated. "I understand." He maintained his composure, refusing to add to her burdens with his own disappointment. "The project comes first. Your position comes first." "It's not what I want." For the first time, raw emotion broke through Amanda's professional veneer. "But it's necessary, for now." Eric nodded, respecting her decision, even as he questioned its inevitability. "And Sophie shall ask about you." Pain flickered across Amanda's face. Tell her I had to go away for work, that I miss her dinosaur stories." "She'll understand that. Kids are resilient." Eric moved toward the door, maintaining the distance Amanda had requested. "For what it's worth, I think you're making the wrong choice. Not professionally, I can't judge that. But personally, letting Harrington dictate your life beyond these walls, that's giving him power he hasn't earned." Amanda didn't respond immediately, something conflicted in her expression. Finally, she spoke with quiet certainty. "I built this company, Eric. It's been my life's work. I can't simply walk away because the board disapproves of my personal choices." "No one's asking you to walk away, but compartmentalizing your life to please others, that's exactly what you said your father did to you." Eric held her gaze. "Your mother wanted more for you. Different." The words landed with visible impact. Amanda inhaled sharply, recognition and resistance warring in her expression. "That's not fair." "Probably not." Eric reached for the door. "Good night, Ms. Reynolds. I'll have the revised implementation schedule on your desk by morning." The next 3 weeks unfolded in a blur of frantic activity. The Phoenix team worked around the clock to implement security solutions within the compressed timeline, cutting corners where absolutely necessary, while documenting every compromise for future resolution. Eric drove the process relentlessly, channeling his personal frustration into professional determination. Amanda maintained her distance as promised. Her visits to the project room became brief, formal, focused exclusively on technical updates. She addressed Eric with the same professional courtesy she extended to all team members, no lingering glances or private conversations. To the casual observer, their previous connection might never have existed. Sophie asked about Amanda repeatedly during the first week, her disappointment palpable. Eric explained as instructed. Amanda had important work travel. She missed Sophie, she'd visit when she could. The excuse satisfied temporarily, but his perceptive daughter sensed the deeper truth beneath his explanation. "Did you and Amanda have a fight?" she asked one evening as Eric tucked her into bed. "Like when Zoe and I didn't talk for 3 days because she took my special pencil without asking." Eric smiled despite himself at the comparison. "Not exactly a fight, sunshine. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated situations at work that make other parts of life difficult." Sophie considered this seriously. "But you'll fix it right, like you fix the computer problems at work. Some problems can't be fixed by just one person. They need everyone involved to want the solution." Eric smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "Right now, Amanda needs to focus on her job. That's very important to her. More important than us." Sophie's question cut to the heart of the matter with childlike directness. Eric hesitated, unwilling to simplify a complex situation, yet wanting to be honest with his daughter. "Right now, yes, and that's okay. People have different priorities at different times in their lives." Sophie frowned, clearly finding this answer unsatisfactory. "I still miss her. She explains dinosaurs better than you do." "High praise indeed." Eric kissed her forehead. "Maybe someday she'll explain dinosaurs to you again. But for now, you're stuck with my inferior dinosaur knowledge." As the original deadline approached, tension throughout the Phoenix team reached unprecedented levels. The revised security solution functioned, but remained untested under real-world conditions. Documentation was incomplete, training materials rushed. Everyone recognized they were delivering a compromised product, yet no one dared voice these concerns to the board. The night before the scheduled board presentation, Eric found himself alone in the project room. Well past midnight, running final diagnostics on the system, the results confirmed his fears. The solution worked, but contained vulnerabilities that would require immediate patching after implementation. He documented each issue methodically, preparing both the polished presentation the board expected and the sobering reality report Amanda would need. The security door opened unexpectedly. Amanda entered looking as exhausted as Eric felt, though her appearance remained immaculate. "You're still here." She moved to his workstation, maintaining professional distance despite the late hour and empty room. "How bad is it?" "It functions. It will impress the board and satisfy the clients initially." Eric gestured to his screen displaying the diagnostic results. "And it contains exactly the vulnerabilities we predicted when we requested the timeline extension. All documented here with recommended patches for immediate post-launch implementation." Amanda nodded, unsurprised. "So we're launching a flawed system to satisfy an arbitrary deadline." "Essentially." Eric didn't soften the assessment. "It's not catastrophically flawed. The core encryption still works, but the transmission protocols need the additional work we originally outlined. I'll ensure the board understands the situation after launch. Once Phoenix proves successful in the marketplace, they'll authorize the necessary resources to address these issues." Amanda studied the diagnostic reports. "You've done remarkable work under impossible constraints, Eric. The entire team has." "At what cost?" The question escaped before Eric could reconsider it, his exhaustion lowering his usual filters. "The system, yes, but also to you, to your leadership vision, to your personal life." Amanda's professional mask slipped, revealing the strain beneath. "That's not relevant to tomorrow's presentation, isn't it? You've spent 3 weeks sacrificing everything to Harrington's demands, working 18-hour days, reverting to your Iron Queen management style, isolating yourself from anyone who matters to you personally. And for what? To launch a product we both know isn't ready. To save this company from short-sighted leadership." Amanda's control cracked, further genuine emotion bleeding through. "To preserve the careers of everyone on this team, including yours. To protect the vision of what Phoenix could become, even if its initial launch is compromised." Eric stood, closing the distance between them for the first time in weeks. "And what about your vision? Not for Phoenix or Reynolds Technologies, for Amanda Reynolds." She didn't back away, though tension radiated through her posture. "My vision has always been professional success." "Has it? Or was that your father's vision imposed so early you never questioned it?" Eric held her gaze. "You told Sophie you hadn't met the right person to have a family with. Was that true, or did you never allow yourself to consider the possibility because it didn't fit the predetermined path?" "That's unfair." Amanda's voice wavered slightly. "I've made my choices consciously." "Have you? Or have you simply followed the blueprint laid out for you, excelling within boundaries you never chose?" Eric softened his tone, aware he was pushing into deeply personal territory. "Your mother wanted you to have choices, Amanda. Real ones, not just variations on a predetermined theme." Amanda stood perfectly still, the truth of his words visibly impacting her. When she finally spoke, her voice carried an unfamiliar vulnerability. "What if I don't know how to choose differently? What if this is all I am? The CEO, the Iron Queen, the woman who sacrifices personal connection for professional achievement?" "I don't believe that." Eric reached for her hand, a simple human connection after weeks of enforced distance. "I've seen you with Sophie. I've seen you laugh at animated movies and build dinosaur models on my living room floor. I've seen Amanda beyond the Reynolds name and title." Her fingers curled around his, the contact seeming to anchor her. "And if choosing differently means losing everything I've built, then you build something new." Eric's certainty came from his own experience of rebuilding after devastating loss. Something that includes all the parts of yourself, not just those deemed professionally valuable. Amanda's free hand moved to his face, the gesture tentative yet deliberate. "What if I'm afraid? Then you're human." Eric smiled slightly. "Welcome to the club." The distance between them vanished as Amanda leaned forward, her lips meeting his in a kiss that felt simultaneously inevitable and extraordinary. 3 weeks of enforced separation, years of emotional walls dissolved in that moment of connection, hesitant at first, then deepening with shared certainty. When they finally drew apart, Amanda's carefully maintained composure had transformed into something rarer, genuine vulnerability tempered with quiet strength. I don't know what happens next. Neither do I. Eric kept hold of her hand, unwilling to relinquish the connection so newly reestablished. But I think that's the point of choices. You don't know the outcome when you make them. You just have to decide what matters most. Amanda's gaze remained steady on his. I've spent my career planning 10 steps ahead, calculating every outcome before acting. How's that working for you? The gentle teasing drew a surprised laugh from her. Professionally, exceptionally well until recently. Amanda's expression softened. Personally, less so. Maybe it's time for a different approach. Eric squeezed her hand gently. Not abandoning the career you've built, but making space for more, for possibilities beyond the blueprint. Amanda nodded decision, crystallizing in her expression. Starting with telling the board the truth tomorrow, about Phoenix's status, about the compromises made to meet their arbitrary deadline, about the real timeline needed to create a truly secure system. That could jeopardize your position. Eric stated the reality they both recognized. Yes, but launching a flawed system without full transparency jeopardizes something more important, my integrity. Amanda straightened resolution, replacing uncertainty. If Harrington wants to remove me for prioritizing security and honesty over expediency, so be it. And after tomorrow, Eric left the question open-ended, encompassing possibilities neither was ready to articulate fully. Amanda smiled, the expression transforming in her face. After tomorrow, we make choices. Real ones not dictated by Harrington or tradition or fear. She glanced at her watch. But first, we both need sleep before facing the board. They left the building together, the night air cool against their faces as they emerged onto the quiet street. Amanda's car waited at the curb, her driver discreetly avoiding eye contact as they approached. Would you like a ride home? Amanda asked. Eric shook his head. Thank you, but I think we both need clear heads for tomorrow. Big decisions deserve proper consideration. Wise as always, Mr. Taylor. Amanda's formal address carried new warmth, almost teasing. I'll see you at the board presentation. 9 a.m. I'll be there. Eric held her gaze one moment longer. Whatever happens tomorrow, Amanda, with the board, with Phoenix, with everything else, remember, you have choices. Real ones. She nodded, understanding the deeper meaning in his words. Good night, Eric. Good night, Amanda. As her car pulled away, Eric found himself standing alone on the Chicago sidewalk, the city quieter than usual in the pre-dawn hours. Tomorrow would bring confrontation, possible professional upheaval, and the beginning of choices neither of them had anticipated when the Iron Queen had stumbled in her red dress at a charity gala months earlier. Whatever came next for Phoenix, for Amanda's career, for the connection growing between them, would be determined not by obligation or expectation, but by conscious choice, by the courage to build something new from the foundations of what came before, by the recognition that true strength lay not in isolation, but in the vulnerability of connection. Here's an additional 300-word ending to provide closure to the story. The board meeting unfolded exactly as Amanda had prepared for, with truth at its center. She presented Phoenix's status honestly, detailing the compromises made to meet their deadline and the immediate patches required for proper security. This system is functional but flawed, she stated, looking directly at Harrington. We can launch as scheduled, or we can delay 3 weeks and deliver excellence. The choice impacts not just our reputation, but patient data security nationwide. Harrington's face darkened. Ms. Reynolds, this presentation contradicts everything. It contradicts what you wanted to hear. Amanda interrupted, her voice steady. Not what you needed to know. Reynolds Technologies' integrity matters more than arbitrary deadlines. The ensuing debate divided the board, but an unexpected ally emerged in Westfield who valued security over expediency. By meeting's end, they had approved the 3-week extension with a caveat: Amanda would be personally accountable for the results. Outside the boardroom, Eric waited. One look at her face told him everything. They agreed, she said, relief evident in her voice. Not unanimously, but enough. 6 weeks later, Phoenix launched to universal acclaim, its security protocols flawless. As the development team celebrated, Amanda and Eric slipped away to a small Italian restaurant where Sophie waited excitedly with Mrs. Chen. Did they like your computer program? Sophie asked as they joined her. They loved it. Amanda smiled, taking the seat beside her. But I have something more important to discuss with you. She glanced at Eric, who nodded encouragingly. Sophie, would you mind if I became a bigger part of your and your father's life? Perhaps even share your pancakes Saturdays sometimes. Sophie considered this with characteristic seriousness, bowed before breaking into a smile. Only if you help with dinosaur classification. Boss still gets the herbivores mixed up. That night, walking hand in hand beneath Chicago's glittering skyline, Amanda and Eric knew they'd chosen correctly. Not a path dictated by others, but one they'd built themselves, encompassing career and family strength and vulnerability, past grief and future joy. Sometimes the most important choices were the simplest after all.